So let's get to the very beginning of Startup Grind, Derek. So you were working in EA, and then you made the decision of starting your company, and then Startup Grind happens to be a side project for you, which turned out to be a global community today. What was the unfair advantage you had when it comes to building a community?
Interesting question, and I think goes to what you hear a lot of VCs say, which why are you the best? You need to be the best person in the world to do what you're doing if you're going to be successful. I think I had a couple of unfair advantages. One is that I needed more help than just about anybody else. So I had started a bunch of companies, have been trying different things. None of it had really worked. And so, we started Startup Grind to educate ourselves, basically. The other thing that I became really good at, strangely, is cold emailing and getting people to agree to speak. That's something I'm very good at. I probably got better at it with time, but I've always been kind of good at it. So that was something you really needed for this kind of project, to be bold, to unapologetic, and to just go for it. And a lot of people resonated with those messages that I would send. Startup Grind, I think, really needed to be started when it was started, where it was started. It needed to be started in Silicon Valley as the first chapter, and then for that to kind of be the glue out to the rest of the world. There are other great community organizations. The TIE is a great organization, started in India. Startup Weekend was started in Boulder, Colorado. But for what we needed to do to be like sort of the epicenter of the startup world, it really needed to come out of Silicon Valley. Most things don't need to be. Most things you can be anywhere to start it, but this one in particular, you needed to be here. And so that worked to our advantage. And it kind of, that last wave of entrepreneurship in, after the Social Network movie, if some of you have seen that, and, coming out of the Great Recession in the United States, which sort of started to end around 2012, 2011, 2012, we started to come out of that, and there was a lot of optimism again. And so, maybe coming out of COVID, whenever that's going to be, maybe there will be another wave of entrepreneurship or excitement. And hopefully we can grow with that, or maybe something better will come along. Hopefully not. But, but there's sort of this sort of right time, right place situation. And I just happen to be a good person to do it.
The values happen to be the core of what we do, right? Whenever people think about Startup Grind, the three values that come up to their mind: give more than you take, help each other, and make friends instead of just connections. How did you distill them? Where did that come from?
Yeah, and just to step back even a little further, for those that we're obviously on a Startup Grind event, but Startup Grind connects and educates and inspires startup people around the world. We have chapters in about 600 cities where we host events. We do about 200 to 300 events a month where we bring people together. It used to be in person, now virtually, and then we have content that gets read by tens of millions of people on an annual basis. And so, our whole mission has been to just support people inside of startups and to try to make the journey a little less lonely. And the values, which I think existed from the very beginning, but about a couple years in, I had a speaker attend. And after the event, he invited me to have lunch with him. And he said, "Do you know what makes Startup Grind unique?" And I sort of said I did not, and wasn't sure it was that unique. And he said, and he described some of these values. He's like, "No, like Startup Grind is about giving more than you take. It's about helping others. It's not about LinkedIn connections." And I said, "Well, yeah, of course it is." And he said, "Well, that's very unique." And he said, you need to talk about those things. And so I drove back to my garage where I was working at the time, where actually I am now. Again, with COVID, I'm back working in my garage at home. And I wrote them down, and then within a few hours, we had put them on the website. And I think from that became maybe, if not the single most important thing we did, a top 2 or 3 thing. Because and I always thought values before were like this stupid, exercise that people did in big companies to just like do an offsite and spend a bunch of money and just, you come up with values or whatever. But actually, it's like one of those lights that attracts the bugs and and kills bugs that you maybe take when you're camping, or maybe you have it hanging outside. It's like a light that attracts the kind of people that those values represent, or the people aspire to represent. And so we've attracted some, hundreds of really incredible organizers and chapter directors from those values, and those are things that have resonated with people across the world.
So that's something that you always had in your mind, even with your first event, or did that happen somewhere?
No, I think we just tried to be just whoever we were. We tried to be good people, and generally, like, values are a reflection of the founders or the early team. And it could be their values, or it could be the values that they aspire to have. So I don't know that I'm the best person in the world at living the startup grind values. There's other chapter directors that actually, frankly, are much better at it than I am. But they are things I aspire to be. And I think we, inside of our very first events, we were like that. We were genuinely trying to help people. We were genuinely trying to build relationships. We were genuinely trying to help, and that there was no ulterior motive. There was no, money we're trying to make on the side. There's nothing like that. It was just to be genuine about it, and that kind of started to kind of bleed through into, everything that we did as part of Startup Grind.
So what was the initial attraction for audience to come together? Were you bringing great speakers? Was that the hook, or what got people together? Because getting people together and keeping them together is a very difficult thing to do, right? And there are so many navigations, there are so many things that people have that they can get distracted with. But what was the secret recipe when you started off with? I remember you telling about the 6th event where there were just 4 people in the in the event, 2 of them being you and your co-founder. Why did you not give up at that point and said, hey, you know what, this is not what I want to do? What kept you going through, and what was the secret sauce that you added?
I think with every project that I've ever worked on, there comes a point where all the data points to just giving up and not pursuing it. And that goes with the good and the bad projects. Sometimes the data says you should give up, and you should give up. It's not going to work. And I've had lots of those. So, sometimes I think about why I didn't give up on Startup Grind. The data was pretty clear to not do it. And so I don't totally know. I knew that I hadn't given it my best effort. And so that was very motivating to me. I just said, hey, I just had a big failure right at that moment as well. So it compounded with that event that you described. I got in my car that night, and it was just a really bad month. And that event, which I didn't really care that much about, honestly, it didn't, just because there was no pressure on it. But there were other things that had pressure that I had failed at. And so I was feeling really discouraged. And but I knew I hadn't given it my all. And so I just made a pact with myself that I would give it my all. And if people ended up liking it, they liked it. If they didn't, they didn't, but I would have tried the hardest I could try. And thankfully, the very next event had about 40 people at it. And I gave it my all. I really did everything I could do to try to make it a great event. And that gave me enough courage and excitement and energy to do it again. And the next one had 50 or 60 people. So it like over the next 4 or 5 events, it kept growing kind of consistently up. And then it didn't always go up, like it went back down and up and down and up and down. But I had enough energy then and enough positive feedback from attendees to say, hey, this is worth you spending more time on. And if you give it your all, people will appreciate it. And so that, that motivated me to just keep going for a while.
So it's been 10 years, right? Startup Grind, we've celebrated in February in the global conference, 10 years of Startup Grind. In
Right.
these 10 years, what are the events that you remember the most? Maybe the top 2 that you remember the most. Is it crossing America, or do you consider that to be the first milestone, the best milestone that you have, or is it reaching the first 100 chapters? What were the top that you can think of when it comes to the 10-year long story?
Yeah, I mean, when we hit 50 chapters, that was a big milestone for us. When we got Google to be involved in it, this was in about 2013, when they became a global partner of ours. We were still only in about 50 cities, but that there was a moment there that just felt like, oh wow, we've separated ourselves from other people. And I mean, there have been many proud moments. Different speakers we've had, had some of my business heroes speaking or getting to interview them. Those have definitely provided some really great moments. I mean, anytime we genuinely help somebody, someone to the point where they like, they really say that Startup Grind is a major part of their success, that those moments really stand out and mean a lot. And that could be a chapter director who's life got a lot better being part of Startup Grind, or that could be a startup we supported, or those things really stand out to me. But yeah, I mean, I think I'm just grateful. Startup Grind was never supposed to be anything. So honestly, like every day that Startup Grind exists is a good day for me. And I think it's going to be around for a really long time. But, we just, there were other things that I was really, really worried about being successful. And most of the times those weren't. But Startup Grind had this kind of project feel to it where it could just be, there just wasn't pressure on Startup Grind. And I've always loved that about it. It's always been, you asked me at the beginning, like, how do you do 2 things? Honestly, Startup Grind is kind of my hobby. And it's my own self-education. And so it doesn't really feel like another job. It just feels like something fun that I get to be part of, like a club. And
do you still feel that way?
I do. Yeah, I do still feel that way.
Wow.
And so yeah, like, it doesn't, there's just not, I don't put a lot of pressure on it. I want it to be great. So it's not an excuse for lack of quality, but I just don't, it doesn't need to become Uber, or, it doesn't need to become Flipkart or whatever. Like it can be what it is, and can be great, and it can be as big as it needs to be, or as small as it needs to be, or, it can have as many employees or as few employees, or, we just want to have a big impact, whatever it takes to have a big impact. And that's pretty genuine. And so that to me still makes it really fun to be part of it.
You spoke about a lot of things in your answer, and that leads me to asking you a bunch of questions. But most importantly, the model that you have chosen for Startup Grind, which is a completely voluntary based kind of a system, right? Where did that come from? Where did that inspiration come from? Did you ever feel that there is a higher potential of monetizing it? I see a lot of there's a client of ours who was talking about a bunch of Harvard students um, trying to build a community and to monetize it in a big way, like a physical community, just like Startup Grind, and they are facing all kinds of challenges. How did you end up with this model, and why did you feel most comfortable doing it this way?
It's funny. There's so many little funds now of different venture funds, and there was another one that launched this last week, and I was sort of chuckling about it because in 2012, someone came here to my garage, a very reputable venture capitalist, and said, "Hey, we should build a fund for Startup Grind. It'll be a much better business model for you." I'm pretty sure they were right about that it would have been a much better business model. But it wasn't what Startup Grind was about. Startup Grind was never about investing in as many companies as possible. Startup Grind was just about helping as many companies as possible. And investing in them never was really that interesting to me, because I think founders should cherish and protect their equity like the gold that it is. But it would have been better for us financially, probably. I don't regret it at all. And I think as we, have looked at many, many other business models, are constantly looking at other things. Even still to this day, we still look at other things. I sort of, again, I don't put a lot of pressure on it. I wanted to be successful. I wanted to be sustainable. I definitely want that. But it doesn't need to be something that it isn't. We came up with a business model, which is basically at the local chapter level, we share in some of the revenue that happens, if revenue happens. And then we have global events and global partnerships with people like Google and Amazon and others. I sort of looked at myself as a chapter leader. I started the first chapter in Silicon Valley, and I looked at that and said, "Hey, what would make me be part of a larger organization? What would the business model have to be?" And so we came up with something that I felt was an easy thing to say yes to if I was sitting on the other side of the table. And we just said, "Hey, we'll just do that, and hopefully it'll work out." And for the most part, it has. So, I think we did think deeply about it, but we've basically kept it the same since the beginning. But I think we wanted to build a sustainable business. We didn't, people ask us, "Why aren't you a nonprofit?" We're an impact company. We're trying to teach people how to run a good business. And it always seemed funny to me that a lot of these community organizations aren't good businesses. And so we've always tried to run a good business as an example to people who are trying to learn how to make a good business for themselves. And, again, we're not perfect and far from it. We have lots of flaws, but we've been able to find a way to be sustainable for about 8 years since we started as an actual company.
Got it. So, Derek, how did you crack Google? What was the story behind that?
By the time I talked to Google, we had hosted hundreds of events, and so we weren't sort of new. We weren't a new thing. A lot of times people want, or they need that to get going, and we were already well established before meeting Google. But so when I approached them, I think that was a little bit different than people they were used to talking to. And they kind of blew us off a little bit, just said, "Hey, yeah, let's talk in, 4 or 5 months." And then I emailed them back the next week and I said, "Hey, we have an event in about a month and we'd love to do it with you. We don't have a venue for it. Could we host it at Google?" And they were like, yeah, let's do it. Let's put an event together. We can host it here. And I said, okay. And they're like, well, who's speaking? And, we didn't tell them. We were like, oh, we don't know. We don't have an event. We need to plan it quickly. And so we just kind of invented a few ways to work with them so that we could speed up the deal cycle. And one thing that the person that did the deal with us, he always shares when he tells the story, is he says that at that first event, he saw at the end of the event, he saw me picking up pizza crusts off the floor to clean up the event. And he always says like that made a big mark on him, because he realized that like we were people that cared about the details, and and people that were we didn't just leave the trash for somebody else. We didn't mind doing the dirty work, and that that was different to him. And so we had a few good experiences like that, and then pretty soon we started working together, and we worked really hard on it, and they worked with us the next year and the next year, and it's been basically 8 years since then. But it's it's something we never took for granted. We've always tried to deliver more value than what we get, and and they've always delivered more value to us than what they promised as well.
All right. If you had to do something differently in the last 10 years when it comes to startup grind, do you have anything in your mind? Would there be anything you've done differently if you had to redo it?
Yeah, lots of things I would have done differently, sure. I think I would have. I think honestly, like if I could do the biggest thing, if I could do differently, if I knew the end from the beginning, I'd just try to treat people better. I mean, I think we've treated people well, but I think I would just try to do. There's always room for more kindness. There's always room for more thoughtfulness. There's always room to help people more. And I think, I think whether that's employees and trying to treat them better or pay them more or do more for them, or whether that's chapter directors trying to give them more, trying to help them more, the attendees trying to do more. There's just like, there's always more that we could do. And, it's hard sometimes when you're in the moment, you don't know, and you're in a startup that's funding itself, you don't know how long you're going to survive for. And so you're constantly trying to sort of make sure that you survive. And I think just generally, like if I could go back and do with a lot of things, like I would probably slow down a little bit. I would enjoy it a little bit more, and I would probably try to be more kind, because we get rushed and nervous and anxious about things, and usually things just work out. So
Awesome. We will take few questions from our audience, Derek.
great.
Kane asks you, what is your favorite way to start a cold email?
The best way to start a cold email is with a very unique subject line. And we all get hit up with salespeople all day long. And when you see a bad, generic, thoughtless subject line. So I like to put something that feels original or just feels like it stands out. And, and that hopefully gets them to open it. And then the other thing I would just say is that the time of day that you send it can be very important, and which day. I find that very successful people are working very late at night. So if I'm working late at night and I get a really like an email that looks like somebody took a lot of care to it, I think I'm more inclined to help, because the day is slowed down and I'm not doing a lot and I'm not getting a lot of emails. And so I think those two things are probably like the first things that I try to do, is like try to find the right time and the right day of the week, which is usually like, it's not a Monday. It's not in the heavy traffic times. You send an email Monday morning, like it's dead on arrival. Doesn't matter what you say. So it's combining that. I've sent emails at 2 a.m. that got a response in 5 minutes from very successful people.
Wow.
And so, that's not always what happens, but, towards the end of the week, late at night, and something that just feels like, oh, this person was being thoughtful. I think those are my suggestions.
The top hacks to make somebody open a cold email. Wow. Clark asked this question where he says, all great communities with massive following and great movements have extraordinary leaders, right? And what do you think are the most essential habits, practices, and qualities of an excellent leader?
I think consistency, just being somebody that is going to be there day in and day out. You can't, it's the same thing of like being a good dad or a good husband. Like if you take a weekend off, or if you take a month off, you could ruin the whole thing. You could ruin your marriage if you take a weekend off and make some big mistakes. So, I think being a CEO is the same thing. I mean, you can lose all the goodwill that you create very quickly, and not even by doing anything overly catastrophic. And I've certainly done that before, where I lost a lot of trust by sending a really thoughtless email, or getting upset about the wrong thing, or so it's very hard to build trust. It's very easy to lose it. I think I think great people want to be pushed to be great. So mediocre people, not so much. They don't want to be pushed. But great people want to constantly be pushed to be great. So if you're surrounding yourself with great people, you need, and as founders, I don't think we're naturally great managers. Founders are much more naturally great doers. And so we've got to shift. As you start to get people on your team, you got to shift to your mindset of, how do I get the most out of my team versus how do I get the most work done myself? And that's a hard mindset shift. I struggle with it, honestly. But it's something more and more like, when you start to get great people, if you're fortunate to get great people on your team, like doing everything you can do to maximize their time and their success can mean a lot more to you than actually doing the work, which is what you're used to doing at the beginning. And I think, I don't like the word vision, because I think it's misleading. To me, a vision sort of sounds like something that just sort of appears in the middle of the night, and you drive toward that imaginary thing until it becomes, a reality. And to me, vision is much more of a iterative, creative, up and down process. And so, but I do think leaders need to have a goal and an objective that they're pushing people towards. And you need to articulate that and tell that as cohesively as possible, over and over and over again, to the point of, as somebody said to me recently, to the point of making you want to throw up. You say the same thing again and again and again, and it takes people dozens of times to internalize what is maybe obvious to you. And I struggle with that as well, of like repeating that again and again and again and again, because it just seems like such a waste of time. But actually, it's I think the way to not see it as a waste of time is like just understand that's what normal is. If people are going to internalize a message, they need to hear it again and again and understand it deeply, and you need to communicate like a legend in order to internalize that message with people.
Great. We will take some more questions, but let's talk about Bevy for a while, Derek. So after you built your community, you've created a platform. You're giving a SaaS solution to companies to create communities. My first question, you said the website says that community is like a moat for an organization, right? That's beautiful. That's really beautiful. So in a digital era where the cost of switching is almost negligible, creating a community, having a following, having your own tribe differentiates successful companies from not so successful companies. Where did this thought process come from, and how do you envision Bevy helping large companies create sustainable communities?
Just to nail this point home again to what I just said, you got to keep repeating it again and again. For those that are community being is the moat. When at some point you basically have feature function parity with products. Products are basically the same. Is Salesforce's CRM significantly better than other CRMs? From a feature standpoint, it's not. Well, in the States it's Uber or Lyft. Is Uber that much better than Lyft? No, they're the same product basically. And that's a pretty consistent thing across the board. So what keeps a customer to keep using your product when you have feature function parity with other products in your space? What keeps them as a customer when somebody comes in and undercuts your price? When someone has a slightly better UI? When someone uses the latest, newest technology, which is constantly happening, a new technology is being formed and someone's building off of that, which can be exciting. And the thing that we have discovered in working with some of the best companies in the world is that what keeps people there is the community. And it is a constant, it's not a marketing drip campaign. It's people that genuinely care about their customers and that want to bring meaning to their customers' professional lives and also their personal lives. And they build programs designed to enrich the lives of their customers, whether they make money on those programs or not. They know they will make money on them eventually, but that's not the driven stated goal of those programs. So, if I'm a founder or I'm in an early stage startup and I only have a few customers, or I only have a few dozen or a few hundred customers, maybe, I need to be building a tribe-like feeling inside of every single one of those customers, because especially if I'm a small company, because I'm probably feature inferior. I'm certainly resource inferior, so they're going to want tons of new things, and I'm not going to be able to build them all. And so what do you do to keep people excited and keep them to be somebody that's advocating for your product and talking about it? And the community that you build amongst those customers can be the glue, is often the glue that keeps people engaged and keeps them from leaving. And so, yeah, I think community marketing or building a community, it was something we thought was going to take another 3 or 4 or 5 years to really catch on. But with COVID, we've probably jumped about 2 years. People are talking more about building a community now than ever before, which I'm thrilled about. And the things we learned at Startup Grind, the other thing is 90% of what we learned building a community, we found works for basically any community. So so that's, it's been really fulfilling to be a part of so many great brands and to work with them to help them build their community, sometimes from zero, sometimes like a Salesforce or a Google, they already have amazing communities. We just help them amplify that. And so, that's been a really powerful thing for us to see these communities growing and thriving where they didn't exist or they weren't thriving before. Is really what Bevy is sort of designed to do.
So when you talk about a cult-like following, one of the big brands that comes up in our minds is Apple, right? They, I mean, Steve Jobs was a visionary, and he has done a lot of right things back in the day, and people still are very loyal followers of Apple. There was no Bevy, or there was no the whole community building per se back in the day. What do you think has changed over time? What is different now when compared to back then, and why did community building become so important right now?
I mean, they definitely did community building. They maybe just didn't call it that. I mean, they had very early on, they had user groups. Steve Jobs would meet directly with customers. Apple was born from, was born from basically a meetup that Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs were part of, the Homebrew Club, I think is what it was called. And so like they were very community minded people in the beginning, and then they built a brand with values that people resonated with. The thing they couldn't do is they couldn't do it at scale. And so, and they couldn't do it systematically, or I think a lot of those early technology companies, they had to do it at a huge cost. And so what's happened over the last few decades is community is basically now it's a service. Creating the values and creating that, that feeling that people have towards your product, that's not something you can easily manufacture. But if you have a product that people like, and this is what I say, we work with people like Duolingo, and we work, in the consumer world, GoPro, and then we work with people in the education space, and then we work with people in the technology world. So what I say is, like, if you have passionate customers or users, anybody can build a community. But you need your foundational things you need there, and then you can sort of put on great technology on top of that, and you can do it at a huge scale with very few resources. Generally, when people talk about community marketing, there's two things. They talk about online community, and they talk about events-driven, offline, more qualitative community building activities. And so there are some great tools for building online communities. What Bevy focuses on is the other piece of it, the kind of the more qualitative, the more deeper engagements through events and programming. And I think with a lot of technology tools, because these tools are so complex and they're so heavy, you need more qualitative discussions around getting people to adopt those products or getting people to really engage in your product. And so community has become a great way to bring marketing, to help retain your customers, to help expand your customers, and to acquire new customers. Because, again, like Salesforce is an example, it's a very complex product. It actually doesn't even work when you first buy it. You have to pay somebody to make it work for you. In that way, it's very frustrating. We love Salesforce, but that, like, it requires discussion, and a lot of complex technology products require discussion even just to get them to work. And so that's where community can come in and really help sort of, fill in the gaps, and again, be the glue for, how you retain customers, how you expand them, and then also how you acquire them.
How did this transition happen, Derek, from startup grind to building a Bevy and going serving other clients about it? Where did the core inspiration come from? Was it always in part of your plan, or did something inspire you to make that happen?
It was totally not obvious. We started really having problems growing startup grind. The pain of scaling was getting really bad. And so I looked at tools that were available. We couldn't find anything that really matched our needs more than about 60%. And so we naively thought, well, we better just build our own thing. We build exactly what we want. And so my co-founder and I and two other engineers at the time, we started working on this product, and we worked on it for about a year. And then we launched it with Startup Grind in early 2016. And when you launch a product with one of the largest communities in the world, or the largest anything in that space, it's great because you get immediate usage. It's really bad because you have a lot of fires that you have to deal with. So it pushed us to make a great product quickly. And then once we sort of refined it with Startup Grind, we started showing it to other communities, and they started asking if they could buy it and use it. And so we white labeled it and let them use it. And so that, that kind of became the beginning of, of what Startup Grind and sort of Bevy, they sort of started to sort of separate a little bit. And Bevy was software for community people. And we one of our very earliest customers was a community called CMX, which you should check out, cmxhub.com, if you want to learn more about how to build a great community. Bevy eventually acquired CMX a few years later, but it's a great resource for community building. Atlassian was one of our very first customers. If you use Jira or Trello, Confluent to task manage or for your engineering teams, they started using us when we didn't even have a website, and they started using us, which really shocked me that they would use it. And they're obviously paying for the product. So somebody like Duolingo, which has 300 million users, and I don't know how popular it is in India, but it's very popular in the West. And so these things sort of said, oh wow, we've got all these great brands using it. Maybe we have something really cool here. And then we eventually split the companies. And so we took all the engineers that were at Startup Grind, we moved them to the new company, and that's Bevy, and Bevy totally focused on building every community that was using the tool, and Startup Grind was focused on really just building the Startup Grind community.
I think Jira, Duolingo, all of those companies have a huge footprint in India. So most of our audience would know what you're talking about. Let's talk about India a little bit here, Derek. First question, have you been to India?
I have not been to India.
So
I would like to.
You should make the time and come visit us sometime.
I would love to.
What's your take on India as a startup hub and India as a community of entrepreneurs? Derek, we would like to hear that from you.
So I haven't been to India, but I've lived 8 years outside the United States, mostly in Europe, but I lived in New Zealand for a while and in the South Pacific. So I think I've been in Silicon Valley for 15 years, but I definitely, I'm not from here. The thing about India that's incredible to me is there's two things. One, the technical expertise that comes out of India is unmatched by basically anywhere in the world. So that's always been incredibly impressive to me. And, I think people's drive to create and to build from India is also always been something that's been very inspiring to me. I think, there are different cultures where, people are rewarded for working hard, and people are maybe even expected to work hard. And India is one of those cultures. And I can relate to that. I like people that work hard. I like people that are constantly trying to get better, are constantly have growth mindset. Not to say that everyone in India has a growth mindset, probably, but there is a feeling, at least in the United States, that there is a feeling that people from India don't have an expectation that the world is going to be handed to them, that they need to go create and make things happen if they want to, if they want to be successful. And that's sort of the American way as well, which again, not everyone in America is like that. But so I think there are incredible companies that have come out of India, and I think we see as well it's an interesting time, with all of the geopolitical issues that are going on right now across the world with all of these superpowers and big companies. I think India stands to gain more than just about anyone, because it's effectively been a mostly neutral kind of place to the West, and so we all have countries that we have disagreements with, and India is not different from anybody else in that regard. But with the West in particular, they've just done an amazing job, I think, at being somebody that everybody can get along with, and I think that's really hard to do. And you see, I mean, it's amazing to see, two of our largest companies in the United States are being run by Indians, and or people of Indian descent, I should say. It's I think it just is a credit to the culture and to the values of the country and to the work ethic of the people there, which I greatly admire and respect.
Great. Thank you for all those nice nice things that you said about the country. The Because of COVID and the unprecedented times that we are in, there's a real hard. It's really tough to differentiate, webinars and the online presence from one chapter to the other. All of them are creating some kind of a community development program, like you rightly said. Especially during COVID, the acceleration has been huge. What do you think is differentiating amongst them? I mean, what is the core of it that is attracting audience, and what is the core of it that is keeping the audience together?
I mean, we're all exhausted from Zoom, right? It's draining. And I mean, I'm looking at my calendar today, and I've got 5 hours of Zoom coming after this, and I'm not excited about it at all. Nobody is. Nobody likes to be on Zoom all day. It's not natural. It's physically exhausting. So I think that customers and users, they deserve and they want more than just that, and then they want a more deep and a more rich virtual experience. And I think one thing that's exciting to me about all of the virtual experiences going on is that there is much more community being built inside of these experiences than a lot of times were with the offline events. Offline events, you can be really lazy and just do whatever. But I think naturally virtual events have more community aspects. You have chat, you have Q&A, you have polling, you have different sessions, you have networking. There are different things you can do inside of virtual events that you can do it offline too, but you're kind of forced to do it with virtual events. And so I think that's generally a good thing. But people want more than just Zoom. And I mean, there's a company called AirMeet in India that I think's doing a nice job with trying to bring more to that experience. I think Bevy's doing that. There are other companies out there that are trying to do that. So I'm grateful to be in an interesting space, a space that is people care about. A lot of people care about right now, and we're trying to develop, more tailored experiences, community-driven experiences. We look at ourselves as the only company that's building virtual communities, and we're doing that at huge scale across the world. Salesforce will do 350 events with us this month. Next month Google will do 2,000 events with us. So we do it at a scale that's really difficult, and we help people build community versus just hosting events. So I think users want it. We all need it for our own health and for our own sanity. And I'm excited to see what's coming out, the things we're building and the things other people are building too. There's lots of great progress being made in the virtual space, and COVID's forced us to do that.
All right. That's pretty much from my side. Raven, do you have any questions from the participants?
Yes, we do have a couple of questions from our participants. So, yeah, let's take them. One thing to say, that people are really happy, and just looking at the chat, and I'm just like, the kind of reactions community is giving, like looks like there are a lot of insights from them. So we have a few questions which are so there is one question: what is keeping you going for all these years? Like, from what is driving you, and even now? So that is one question from one of our participants. What is the first thing that drives you?
I mean, it's a very personal question. I want to give an authentic personal answer, and I don't know how useful it is to other people because it's specifically for me. But I think I'm motivated by what motivates billions of people around the world, which is I want to take care of my kids. First and foremost, I want to provide for my family. I think that's ultimately what unites the human family, is that we all, at our most basic level, are just trying to feed our children. And so, like, whether you have children or not, it could be your friends, could be your family, could be yourself. But that's really the biggest driver for me. Then the next driver for me is that I just want to be the best person that I can be. And sometimes I am sort of frustrated that I am not equipped better or haven't made better decisions along the way to have been more successful quicker or to learn quicker. But I just want to, I don't need to be Mark Zuckerberg. I live very close to him in Palo Alto. I'm about the same age as him. I'm a little bit older, but I don't need to be him. I didn't go to Harvard. I just need to be the best Derek Andersen that I can be. And sometimes it's hard to accept that, but that ultimately, like, we should try to be comfortable in our own skin and to be accepting of who we are and to just try to get a little bit better every single day. And that, honestly, we should be totally satisfied with that.
So thank you so much for that. I'm going to hand over this to Kashyap. Kashyap, please take it over. Kashyap, you're talking on mute.
Yeah, thanks, Revant. Thank you. And I think I was just, every time I kind of listen about community, so it always gives a new insight, right? So, and I think coming from Derek, it's a wonderful thing because a lot of people, confuse community with events, right? So I think you clearly differentiated the difference between just organizing events and running it like an event management company versus building cult, building community. And I think the future, I think a lot of companies, as you rightly said, are transitioning towards building communities. So I think the future of marketing is more around building communities. We see a lot of people coming to us, and that's where we also learned a lot. So personally, I think Revant and I met, in fact, because of the community. And in fact, it's the same with Yashwant. So all the three, in fact, got together because of a community, right? So a lot happens over a community. I think back in the day when there were physical events, there were a lot more networking, but still now I think we're doing a lot virtually. I think we'll have a virtual networking event after this. I'm sure a lot of people are going to stay back. But I think the insights specifically on the community were amazing. It's very inspiring kind of to build something at this scale. I think personally we benefited a lot, be it Revant or Yashwant. I think we learned a lot personally. We owe a lot to Startup Grind, and because of the platform that you have given us, and to lots of people who are directors, who are co-directors. I'm sure it's benefiting them firstly in learning about startups. And a lot of people come to us, a lot of people come to us asking us a lot of things about startups, whether helping them with connecting with investors, helping them understand MVP, helping them understand few things about the startups. So in that journey, I think we really learned a lot. All the three have improved a little. We can see that. So before Startup Grind and after Startup Grind, I think personally each of us, we've not just done events. I think we have done a lot more, right? So we've understood the entire ecosystem probably in Hyderabad now. We are connected to a lot of people now. So luckily, a lot of people come back to us. They ask us a lot of things around startups. So thanks to Startup Grind, thanks for starting Startup Grind. So that we are actually able to meet now. We're actually able to get so many people onto a platform like this and impacting, right? So I think that's really a wonderful sort of a contribution. So thanks, Derek, once again. I think it's so early, but you're up so early, and you gave your time. I think we are very happy that you could join us and share your insights and valuable experiences. So thanks once again.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Thank you for having me.
Yes.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
So guys, I think now those of you who want to stay back, I think we'll have a virtual networking. I think we can definitely hit the Q&A probably, and then probably take it offline as well. Those of you who wants to still have a coffee offline, probably you can message in the Q&A, and probably then we can take it. So thanks one and all. I think it was a great session.
Thank you to you all for organizing and for getting it set up. We really appreciate you, and thanks for being running the great chapter in Hyderabad. We're grateful to have you, and appreciate everybody attending. So thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Derek. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek. Have a great day.
Thank you, Derek.
Have a great evening.
Have a great day,
Bye.
Derek. Bye. Bye-bye.